Welcome to the channel, everybody. My name is Andy Rawls, and real quick, before we start this video, I want to give you a little background. First off, there is a precursor, part one, to this whole series where I turned a wooden blank for this cannon. So I would highly recommend you go watch that video if you haven't watched it yet. You'll learn a little bit more about the history of this project. Now, that blank got sent up to the Verdun Foundry in Cincinnati and was turned into a 400-pound bronze cannon, which came back to my shop. And in this video, we're making as part one of the Carriage build for that cannon. Now, a couple quick things to cover before we get started. First off, I did not use historically accurate building methods for this Carriage. There was a really tight time constraint for building this, a lot of moving parts, several different craftsmen involved. So I used every machine at my disposal because we didn't have a lot of time. I couldn't make this thing entirely by hand. So that's the first thing I want to say. Second thing, material. There was a few key requirements for the material on this. First, it needed to be strong, obviously, because not only is it holding a 400-pound cannon, but it also needs to be able to withstand the forces of the recoil from firing a 4-pound cannonball. So I wanted strong material. I wanted air-dried material. We don't want to get kiln-dried wood that would be designed for furniture that goes in a home because that would be drier wood than what the outside relative humidity is. So we would have some moisture and some movement issues. So I wanted air-dried so that there was a balance in moisture content. I really wanted to get reclaimed material because it's just much more stable, typically better growing wood, better trees. And finally, I just wanted material that would be good for exterior use. Since this is going outside the Alamo, we want it to hold up. What I ended up using was reclaimed red oak beams, and these for the most part, fit the criteria. The wheels were made out of some red oak that a personal stash from a tree I milled around 2006 on my family farm here in Texas. It's been sitting in a storage since then, just air dried, never been in a kiln. So the wheels were also made out of southern red oak. We chose kind of a rift quarter for those, and you'll learn more about why we did that soon. Now, all the requirements were pretty much met with exception to the exterior durability of the wood. Red oak is usable in exterior applications, but it's not the best material to use. It's going to require maintenance, and the good thing is it's going to the Alamo where they will regularly maintain these cannons and these carriages. So as long as we keep applying a good outdoor varnish, a good outdoor sealer to this wood, it'll hold up for a very, very long time. Now, if you just let red oak sit on its own out in the elements, it's going to deteriorate a little bit faster than a white oak, or a Spanish cedar, a sapele, or a teak, something that's really designed for exterior use. That kind of paints the picture for this build. Let's jump right in and get started.
I don't think it would be from the oak.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
This could be a good home for scorpion.
Oh.
Heads up.
Okay.
That's quite a bit worse than a wasp sting.
Welcome to Texas. Here's a scorpion.
So basically what we need to do is kind of lay out these are all 3 by 3.5, which works out really well because this is 3 and almost 4, so we can actually resaw 2 out of each one and really use the material all the way.
That would be nice.
But we're gonna have to pick the widest ones we got. It's gonna be this one.
Just that one.
Yeah.
When we're milling them and dimensioning them, we're just going to go right to these final sizes, right?
This is all final size.
And should we go right to that size because we're not going to machine it after that?
No. Yeah, we can go all right to the final size. And like I said, we'll give it a shot, but I basically just want to skim the faces and kind of leave that dark patina the best we can. Now 27 is our longest one. If you rough cut it out from there, just joining that, and it won't take a lot of material to do it.
No,
it's just a short piece.
So maybe we should chop them to our lengths.
We're going to chop them to rough lengths.
Strike our line,
cut them.
Handsaw, all right.
I could bring out the...
yeah, we might have been here a while.
I could bring out the panel saw and let you cut one. I'm not doing it.
What is it?
Just a regular old carpenter saw.
I don't think it would take that long. Yeah, it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
It's all right, though.
You got, it's 10:10, so you got till 10:15. I think you're about halfway, maybe. All right, I'm gonna give you a little.
Please.
You're using like this. I'm probably gonna make this is binding really bad. Holy cow! How are you doing that? Is there no set in this? Yeah. Well, I thought I could help you out.
No, please, by all means.
There must not be any set in this. It shouldn't bind like that. Yeah. I can't believe you were doing that.
Kind of like a table saw blade.
Yeah. Yeah, see, it's actually kind of, it's going to be kind of difficult. So, the only thing, like, I mean, obviously that saw wasn't working well, but, I mean, the idea is to use every length of, the whole length of the saw, right?
All right, longer strokes.
Yeah. All right, I'm tired. Finish it off. It's a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
It's because they're set. They didn't have set. For some reason, I need to
it's
reset the
straight.
teeth. Yeah. Just... Nice. That really wasn't that bad, right? You feel pretty good?
I feel great.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. It's not terrible. And with a saw change.
Yeah. That took away a few 30 seconds, maybe.
All right, let's put this away.
Okay, back to the chainsaw. Got it. Sweet. All right. Well, if we were cutting by hand, we'd be maybe 2 cuts into it, 3 cuts.
I feel like the cumulative fatigue would slow us down.
It's a good point.
Very quickly.
You would probably slow down pretty quick.
I'm not in the same shape I used to be.
Put it over here.
Okay, so the main body of this cannon is made up of 4 parts. 4 parts. You've got 3 that stack on each other and use splines, and then the bottom big massive part is a glued up section. And this is all these are all 3 inches thick. So we've got big massive material here. And that's kind of what you saw Robert and I working on here, is figuring out how we were going to take these beams, which were a heavy 3 inches thick, and a few of them were a little bit bigger than 6 inches wide. And we were able to cut them right down the middle and get all of those side components that we stacked up to make the 2 side frames of this carriage. Now all those sides came together with splines. So the big bottom section was glued up out of 2 pieces, and then the other 3 pieces all kind of squashed together with some 5/8 threaded rod, and there's big heavy duty oak splines that connect each one, so there's no side-to-side shearing movement, and then the back and back movement, those splines are stopped, so it can't really move backwards. Plus, we've got, you have really heavy-duty threaded rods sandwiching all this together. I had Robert cut those out with a router, and I actually milled the splines to fit the grooves on the table saw out of some oak.
these aren't going to get any glue in between these layers, just the thread.
I don't think we'll just thread them down.
So one of the more tedious processes of this build was drilling the 5/8 holes for all the threaded rod. There's three main threaded rod pieces that go down through the sides and hold those side carriages side pieces together. And then there was 3 threaded rods that sandwich it together on the width. And we had to drill those holes, obviously. And that took several steps to do that process, especially on the long one. We would just drill through each individual piece, transfer the hole over, drill the next one, then transfer that hole, drill the next one, and just go through the process of drilling out that hole. And the key to this is it has to be straight. So trying to drill all the way from the top all the way through to the bottom in one pass, you just increase the chances for that bit walking and moving, and then you don't have a straight hole. It's really important that that goes through straight, and we don't kind of steer off to the side to the edge of the board.
Heads up, heads up. Almost went for a ride on that one.
The axles were all made out of the same reclaimed red oak material. It's a little bit tricky because we're fitting wood wheels to wooden axles, so there is some issue there with tolerances and figuring out, okay, how much movement are we going to have in this axle? We shouldn't have a whole lot of movement in the wheels with the way we lay up the grain, which you'll learn about more here coming up in the video. So I turned the axles on the lathe and I freehanded it mostly and just tried to get it the best I could across all 4 wheels. And then here further on in the video, we're going to actually match, I'm going to take calipers to each axle and match it on the CNC with a tolerance added in there for wood movement, basically. And it ended up working out really well. Now the main structure of this cannon are the two big thick side walls, and then we connect those together with two pieces that go in the middle of the carriage, and then obviously the axles on the bottom. And those two pieces, there's one in the front, have a threaded rod going through that we can, you know, suck it together real tight. And then there's one kind of where the base ring of that cannon will sit. And it's the same concept. We run a threaded rod through there and kind of pull it all together. Now I also added dominoes into this, and I know a lot of people are going to gripe because this is a historic old cannon carriage and you're putting dominoes. The dominoes were in there for no other reason, just to give us some reference. It adds a little bit of strength, but we really didn't glue them all because we needed some wood movement in there. It's more just to reference and locate those pieces where I want, especially the piece that holds the wedge block. So that piece had to have a hole bored through it, and I ended up doing that on the lathe, which really worked out well. So in order to get these holes drilled accurately, I decided just to do it on the lathe. A little bit easier to set up, I think, than the drill press. Just put my chuck on the lathe and put a 5/8 drill bit in there. And you know, it kind of takes a while because you got to cut in a little bit of the, however long your stroke is on your tailstock, back it off, crank the thread back, move it forward, and then do it again. It's 2 or 3 stages for me to do that. But it drills an accurate straight hole, and I can't drill all the way through, so I have to flip it and come back. And so since I'm using tailstock, it stays lined up, right? The tailstock's going to leave a little indention, and I can put the bit right into that once I flip it, and the holes meet perfectly. So to me, it's a lot easier to do than flipping it, laying it out and flipping it and doing it on the drill press. I think one of the reasons for this smoke here is a combination of a fairly dull bit and just a really hard oak here. This is a hard wood, and it's having a hard time. It's getting a little hot.
How much more thread is that add? It'll go down to nothing.
So just pop out the little waist in the middle, and I've got a perfect hole right through the middle. And like I said, it met up perfectly, and really couldn't have done it better any other way, I don't think. The next step is to put the dominoes in the piece, drop it in the side frame, and then take a long drill bit and just drill a kind of a marker hole into my side frame that will kind of establish where I need to drill the hole through the side frame. And I'm going to drill a little bit bigger hole. I'm going to come with a 3/4, this is a 5/8 rod, threaded rod. So I drilled the 5/8 into that platform piece, so it's pretty tight there. I'm going to do 3/4 on the outsides to give myself a little bit of wiggle room, because we all know that when you start assembling this, things just may not line up, and I don't want to get in a situation where it doesn't work out. So that 3/4 is going to help me have a little bit of wiggle room, and I can just take it over to the drill press, break it apart here, and take it over to the drill press and drill it out on the drill press.
Nice tuning.
It's definitely the tannin, like it's high in tannin.
Right. Yeah, early this morning when I first started working with it, I was like, man, that's a really nice smell. So I think it all depends on the piece, right?
Yeah, it does.
Now, one thing we did decide to do, so this is reclaimed material, and I like the idea of leaving that old patina face out. It kind of looks cool. It's old, and it has those circular sawn marks. And one thing we did to add a little bit more to that, because when you work that way, it's hard to level everything up. So it's a little bit rough on that outside face. So we just took a jack plane, which has a slight curve to the blade, and just hand planed all those faces, kind of leveled them out, put a little bit of texture to the side of that. If you look back at old historic pieces of furniture, even probably old carriages, you'll probably see hand tool marks similar to what a jack plane is. It's a way a craftsman would remove material quickly because it takes a real heavy cut. So we actually jack planed every surface on those sides, even the inside. So if you look in the right light on the inside of that carriage, you can see all those plane marks and tear out, and it adds kind of an authentic feel, I think, to the carriage. Now, one thing you want to think about here is it feels really weird, right?
Well, it's just different.
Yeah,
I've never.
So cutting the fibers, so the fibers are running out this way, it helps to skew it. Skewing the Drawknife makes things way easier.
Okay.
Going straight like this, it wants to do this. If you skew it, you have way more control.
Okay.
So you want it skewed, and you want to take it. It's hard to get in your mind, but it's actually easier to take quick cutting strokes and kind of get a, almost like a triangle there started, and then you can kind of work in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to do a full pass.
No, you don't want to do a full pass. I mean, once you get it kind of started, you can do kind of more controlled passes and go across. But it's going to be really hard because you've never used this tool.
Right.
So you can play around with it, but you don't have to do it all. Now, this is a great opportunity to share with you about my Patreon page, because there's a lot of moments we film in this shop where I'm teaching Robert, my new apprentice, kind of a skill or technique. And similar to how we were just working with this jack plane, if there's a point in this build where we need to carve something, or there's something that he hasn't done yet, we'll stop and mic up, and I'll walk him through the process. Those usually end up being pretty long sections of video, and occasionally I can cut them and put them in the main video, but more often than not, I'm going to put those over on my Patreon page as bonus content. So if you're interested in seeing more of the interaction and more of a teaching between me and my apprentice Robert, head on over to Patreon and support the channel that way. As far as the finish, we pre-finished all these parts before we assembled the carriage. I think that's a good idea because it gets finish up in all the parts, so wherever moisture can get in, a little bit of finish never hurts anything. For the finish, I used 1 part boiled linseed oil, 1 part mineral spirits, and 1 part spar varnish. This is a very common mixture. A lot of people use this. We put 3 coats on all the parts, with exception to the wheels maybe. I think those were a little behind schedule. We didn't get quite as many coats on it. And I will probably go back, even after this project is all done, and put a few more coats on it at the Alamo, just to make sure we get a really good base coverage of that thing, so that the Alamo can just come back and annually, or even better, you know, twice a year, re-oil that carriage and just keep it maintained real well. Okay, so the wheels, like I mentioned earlier, this is a slab from a tree I cut on my family's farm, a red oak, and we're processing it down, and we're trying to use the kind of quarter sawn. It's more rift, but there is some quarter in this, but we're trying to use a stable grain as possible. A flat sawn is going to have more movement, whereas a rift or quarter sawn is going to have less movement. And the reason I want that, well, for one, we've got a wood-on-wood connection between the wheel and the axle, but also we're going to flip the grain on these. So Robert's milling out, basically each one of these boards will get 1 wheel. He's going to cross cut them here, and then we're going to glue them together. And when we glue them together, we're going to turn the grain perpendicular to itself on each board. And that's kind of going to lock everything together. The reason I'm doing that, and really why I landed on this, is I looked at a lot of historical pictures of these carriages, and a lot of them had glued up wheels with the grain oriented perpendicular, like what we're doing. And that's kind of where I picked it up. And I want to think, and I'm pretty certain that that's to keep it from splitting. If it was a solid piece of wood and you didn't have this glue up here, you could split these wheels pretty easily, considering they're 9 inches in diameter with a hole in the middle. You know, a lot of weight on them, a cannon on them. You know, they could probably split eventually. Even just the weather and the movement could split them. So we're using a marine grade epoxy. You know, we have modern glues now, so why not use an epoxy? And then we're going to the CNC. I'm going to use my CNC to cut these out because, like I said, we're under a time crunch. This will do it really quick. And also, I can dial in each hole in these to fit each particular axle. So I think I mentioned this earlier in the video. I can scale that axle and then add, I think I added 3/32, or maybe a 16th for my tolerance. Okay, so we ran into one small problem here, a problem I created. We got 3 wheels done here, and so we laid up 4 blanks, obviously, because you need 4 wheels. And on the 4th wheel, I didn't get it homed quite right because we don't have a lot we're working with as far as the workpiece compared to the wheel. There's about 1/8 of an inch overall, so a 1/16 on each side. So it has to be centered and honed perfectly on the CNC. This one you can see was a little off, and so we have flat spots, and that is no bueno. So what we had to do is resaw this chunk out, and Robert is about to glue up a new one right here. And tomorrow we'll have this set, and tomorrow we'll give it a second try. Hopefully we get it right, because we don't have a lot of time. These are getting, basically the bit cuts in about 1.125 inches on the CNC. That's about as far as I go with the tooling I have, and then we finish it off with a flush trim bit. Now what we ended up doing is actually dry fitting the entire carriage together, and this is going to lead into the next video. Now real quick, I want to share with you a really cool company called Old West Iron, who actually provided all the hardware with exception to the trunnion straps, which you're going to learn more about in the next video, for this carriage. They provided threaded rods, square nuts with kind of a hammered look to it. They provided the square-headed lag bolts that connected one of the axles, all the washers. They have an awesome selection of not only fasteners, but building hardware. And I found them online, reached out to them, and they were pumped to be a part of this process and this build, and they offered to send the hardware. So a huge thanks to them for helping out with the build. I'm gonna link them in the description. If you're in need of any old-fashioned hardware, go check them out, because they can cover pretty much anything you may need. So with the cannon carriage basically dry fitted, we're ready to bring the actual cannon and fit it onto the carriage. By far the most exciting, maybe one of the top most exciting things that's ever happened in this shop. So that cannon showed up on a Friday, a week before the unveiling ceremony. So basically we lost, obviously Saturday, Sunday, the shop was closed. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the following week, we had to get this all figured out. So I was sweating pretty good. But when Colby and Ernesto showed up with that 400-pound chunk of bronze and showed it to me.
Yep. Ready? Yep. Go ahead and bring it in. Daddy, watch your fingers. And then can someone get on that and start lowering it? Yeah. You gotta start lowering it because it's sliding, Ernesto. Hurry. There you go. Okay, stop, right. Stop.
So we gotta get it centered.
And now come forward. Oh no, I ripped my favorite pants.
Rip your pants, man.
Do you want to bring it in, then we'll unveil it?
Yeah, I think we should do that.
So you saw the pattern you made.
Yeah.
And this is the finished product of that pattern, so.
Pretty cool. Am I doing this?
Yeah, go for it.
Golly, that's awesome. Holy cow. It's crazy. I love how you get the little imperfections in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's the cascabel you made from scratch.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
They're a bell foundry.
So freaking cool.
So, I mean,
What's causing that?
it's just, it's the hollowness of the inside, but also,
Dude.
it's harder to make a bell than it is a cannon. And they've been making bells since 1842. So
Isn't that cool, Johnny?
they perfected it.
So there's like only one group of people that can make a solid bronze gun that will fire solid bronze, not.
I was just blown away at how awesome it was. It's just a really cool feeling to be a part of this process and see how I turned a wooden blank of this thing and it went off to a foundry and came back to this beautiful high polished bronze cannon, which I'm going to show you right now. And then in the next part 2 of this, you're going to watch us all get together. Jason's going to come by, you're going to meet him, we're going to fit the cannon on the carriage, we're going to get it all tidied up and done, and then you're going to see a little bit of the ceremony at the Alamo, the unveiling of the actual cannon and carriage. And then you got to stay tuned for part 2. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think of this video. If you have any questions, appreciate you tuning in. As always, we'll see you next time.